Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we will discuss autosomal dominant trait. So what is autosomal dominant trait? A trait that is present on autosomes and inheritance of that trait is dominant, means a single allele of that trait when present in a person, it will show that trait. So this type of traits are called autosomal dominant traits. So what are characters of autosomal dominant traits? So first is they will appear in both sexes with equal frequency. Means these traits can appear in male or also in female. Here in this pedigree, you can see that this is a pedigree of autosomal dominant trait. So here you can see that both male and female are showing that trait. So here female is showing, in that case male is showing that trait. So it occurs in both male and female with equal frequency. Second character is autosomal dominant trait. In case of autosomal dominant trait, both sexes are capable of transmitting that trait. In that pedigree, you can see that here female is transmitting that trait. From female, it is transmitting to next generation. In that case, here male is transmitting that trait. So it is autosomal. Autosomal means it is not present on sex chromosome, it is present on autosomes. So both sexes are capable of transmitting this trait. The next character of autosomal dominant trait is person with autosomal dominant trait must have inherited from one parent. Suppose these are parents and this is offspring, and this offspring is affected. So if this offspring is affected, then it must have inherited that trait from affected parent. So suppose this is capital A, small a, this is small a, small a, small a. So in that case, it will be capital A, small a, because it is showing that trait. So it have inherited that capital A from this parent. So always, in case of autosomal dominant trait, affected offspring always have affected parents. Here, if both parents are unaffected, then their offspring cannot be affected. Suppose these are both parents. These are small a, because they are unaffected. So their offspring will also be small a. So it will not be affected. So affected offspring always inherit that allele, dominant allele from affected parents, from one of the parents that is affected. So person with trait must have inherited from one parent. So if one parent is affected, then there is a chance that their offspring will be affected. Next is do not skip generation. This type of inheritance never skips generation. Here in this pedigree, you can see that we have 4 generations. Generation 1, 2, 3 and 4. And in all 4 generations, there are persons which are affected. So here in this pedigree, this one is affected, here this one and this one is affected, in that case this one and this one is affected, and in that case this and this is affected. So it don't skip generation. We know that in case of autosomal, you can say recessive trait, it skips generation, but autosomal dominant trait never skips generation. Next character, when one parent is affected. Suppose one parent is affected. So here that parent is affected. That parent is affected. And it is heterozygous. So I am making it heterozygous. And another parent is not affected. Then capital A, small a, capital A, small a, small a, small a, small a, or small a, small a. Here you can see that when one parent is affected and it is heterozygous, then half of their offspring will be affected. affected. So here you can see that this is heterozygous. So half, this one and this one, out of 4, 2 are affected. So half of offspring are affected. And when it is homozygous, suppose it is homozygous, so if it is homozygous, then it will be capital A, it will be small a, small a. Then all offsprings will be affected. So when it is one parent, is only one parent is affected and it is heterozygous, then half will be affected. When it is homozygous, then all will be affected. When both are affected, when both parents are affected, here suppose both of them are affected, and when both are heterozygous, capital A, small a, then capital A, capital A, capital A, small a, small a, capital A, small a, small a. Then if both are affected and heterozygous, then 3/4 will be affected. Here you can see that out of 4, these 3 are affected and this is unaffected. So when both are affected and heterozygous, then 3/4 of their offspring will be affected. And when both are homozygous and affected, then all will be affected. And the last character of that trait is unaffected parent do not transmit that disease. If both parents are unaffected, here in that pedigree you can see that this male is unaffected and this female is also unaffected. So here in whole of its pedigree you can see that no one is affected. So unaffected parents never transmit that disease. So, or you can say trait. So to transmit that trait, at least one of the parent have to be affected. So this is autosomal dominant trait. Both sexes will show that trait with equal frequency, and both sexes can transmit that trait because it is autosomal. So both sexes can transmit that trait. Person with that trait must have inherited from one parent, at least one parent. So if one parent is affected, then there is a chance that their offspring can be affected. It never skips a generation because when it is present in heterozygous condition, it will show that trait because it is dominant. Another is when one parent is affected and it is heterozygous, then half of their parent offspring will be affected, and it is homozygous, then all will be affected. When both parents are affected and heterozygous, then 3/4 of their offspring will be affected, and when both are affected and homozygous, then all will be affected. Unaffected parents never transmits that trait. We can see from that part of this pedigree, both are unaffected and they are not transmitting that trait. So this is autosomal dominant trait.